We are now in aspect 2 of Desjardins chapter 10 of his introduction to business ethics. Here, we will first discuss the old problems with the standard economic view of environmental responsibility, and we'll add a new problem, the problem of unlimited economic growth. We discussed the old problems when we did a criticism of the standard economic view model of social responsibility back in chapter 3. The new problem, that of unlimited economic growth, is introduced here in chapter 10. As we know from our past studies, there are just too many reasons why a business that operates strictly for profits will seek to look for loopholes in laws or break laws whenever it can get away unnoticed or whenever it is cost efficient to do so, when the fines are smaller than the gains from breaking laws. Or business will attempt to influence the making of the laws. Right? All of these are criticisms of that the narrow economic view is just not enough to bring about sustainability. There's also the negative externalities problem. Business will seek to cut costs whenever it can by trying to pass the costs of its production onto other parties. That is also within the narrow economic view. There's also the public goods problem. Business will not produce goods that the public needs unless they are profitable. Sustainability has to be profitable in order to fit into the narrow economic view. Some of it is, as Desjardins will later argue, but some of it may not be. There is also the consumer irrationality problem. Consumers will demand goods that are in their own individual interests, but may hurt the general public interest, including the consumer's own, if it is cost efficient for a consumer to do so. Remember our discussion of that, say, buying SUVs. If everyone had an SUV, then the traffic congestion would be horrible, and the pollution in the air would be horrible too. But the cost to an individual consumer is not that much more, and is well justified by the benefits of convenience to each consumer. But the aggregate effects of it would certainly be such that an individual consumer would not choose for it to be the case that everyone owed SUVs. There's also the first generation problem. The laws that are passed to regulate business are only after the initial harm is already done by business. So if business is not exercising any responsibility on its own, but is simply following laws, the laws that would regulate and assist sustainability would only happen after the damage has already been done. These are the old problems that we've seen with regard to the narrow economic view of responsibility, this time applied to sustainability. Finally, there's the lobbying problem. Business will seek to influence the making of the laws in its favor by trying to influence the political process by which laws are made through lobbying, advertisement, etc. And that would be encouraged by the narrow economic view of social responsibility and sustainability. All right, moving on to the new problem introduced in chapter 10. There is the assumption of the narrow view on sustainability and other social problems addressing models. And that assumption is that of unlimited economic growth. That's the genuinely new element introduced here in chapter 10, the problem of unlimited economic growth. The usual solution to world poverty and even to sustainability has been based on the following idea. As the world and humanity become wealthier, produce more, there will be enough goods and services for everyone, even for the very poor. Indeed, as industrial production has grown, absolute poverty has been significantly diminished, and standards of living have gone up for everyone, even for the poor. So it is understandable to place hope for eradicating poverty, sustainability, and other social problems onto the theory of economic growth. Let us start with a criticism of the unlimited economic growth idea. Desjardins offers a fact and a comment as a criticism of the idea that unlimited economic growth will solve social problems and is sustainable. Here's the fact: 25% of the world's population living in standardized first world countries consumes 80% of the world's resources. Let's go through that one again. 25% of the world's population living in standardized wealthy countries consumes 80% of the world's resources. These are the so-called first world countries. So the way we are currently producing and living, if 25% of the world's population consumes 80% of the world's resources, clearly this is not sustainable, as more and more countries in the world are joining industrialized first world. Desjardins' conclusion: if that is how economic growth takes place, then we cannot count on it to solve the world's problems or even to continue solving the world's problems. Production must be done in a new and a much more sustainable manner.